The so-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, "Administration officials, they are targets." And he also wrote this, "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and I read the manifesto, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President, these are the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace.
Tell her. You'll hear these discussions all morning long, like when Ducey asked President Trump yesterday, "Why does this keep happening to you?" Well, there's your answer. Right there. Norah O'Donnell, 60 Minutes, part of a lot of people who refer to the president, not just the president. I told you this a bunch of times last week. At this point, I get called a pedophile every day. Every day, me, Sid Rosenberg, a pedophile. Couldn't be a better father. Love kids. I'm a pedophile because I'm friends with Trump. So it's not just Trump. Now, if you're associated or, God forbid, friendly, like I am with President Trump, you're a pedophile. You're a rapist. You're all those things. Then you want to know why people are trying to kill him? Well, people like Cole Allen, who may be very book smart, very. Went to college, got a master's degree. He's a moron. Because he believes all the garbage that the liberal media spews. There's your answer. Norah O'Donnell. And then, of course, the liberal politicians. All of them yesterday with their tweets of concern. Shove it up your ass. You're not fooling me, you liars. And the voters. But anyway, I watched Fox News all day. This guy happens to be, as you know, one of my favorites. He's great on television. More importantly, he was an amazing cop here in New York. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had the honor of being honored with him and Bo Dietl by the retired DEA at Russo's on the Bay in Howard Beach. My good buddy, Paul Mauro. Paul, good morning, pal. How are you?
I'm good, Sid. Good morning.
Nice to have you here. Let's start with how this whole thing came about. This Cole Allen checks into a hotel room on Friday night looking to commit this heinous act on Saturday. And folks are asking the question, even before he got to the event on Saturday night, how does somebody make it all the way from Los Angeles to D.C. and check into a hotel with a shotgun, a handgun, a bunch of knives? Is the answer as simple as, well, if you take the train, nobody checks your luggage? Is that the easy answer here?
Well, that is certainly how he got cross-country, because he knew he can't take a plane with the guns. And so, sure, anybody who's taken Amtrak or any of the commercial railroads knows that, they're not going to check your luggage. And so he could do that. The real question, I think, is, we have to face the fact that the hotel was likely, and let's face facts, Donald Trump has been targeted like no other president in our lifetimes, that the hotel is a very, very difficult place to secure. All hotels are. History has shown that. RFK Sr. was killed in a hotel in a shooting. So that being the case, you have to remember it's a commercial establishment that's going to continue to operate while you're holding this event. You got thousands of guests who are going to expect room service, their rooms to be made up, etc. And so there's a lot of conflicting agendas going on, and that played a factor here because he's there being treated as a guest, that is Cole Allen. And so he's afforded a little bit of maneuvering inside the building that somebody just showing up for the event is not going to have. That's what he used to his advantage. And look, were there better ways to secure it? I'm sure there would have been, but they made the decision to do it the way they did because of what I just said. And I think going forward, what they just have to say is, as the Secret Service, if we can't secure the venue, let's find another venue or do a different event. And that goes for this president who, as you mentioned, there are a lot of people out there proselytizing and really advocating and sanctioning violence against him.
There's no doubt about it. They can deny it all they want. That's exactly what they do. Hassan Piker, Hakeem Jeffries, right? The minority speaker. He wants to be the majority speaker. Just a couple of days ago, encouraged violence. Hakeem Jeffries. Let's get to Saturday. So the event gets underway. This guy, I guess I read he was on the 10th floor of the hotel. He was able to make his way to the actual floor of the White House Correspondents Dinner, taking stairs, crouching in certain situations to build his gun, his shotgun. He did have a handgun and a bunch of knives. What can you tell us, Paul Mauro, about when he left his hotel room? What did he exactly do to get to the point where he sprinted past that first perimeter to try to get closer to the president?
So obviously he had checked in before the event, and it sounds like he had scoped out the area and knew where the ingress and egress was going to be near the ballroom. So apparently what he did day of is he knew the timing of it, and I guess he reasoned, unless, there's something else that's going to come out here that we don't know about, he reasoned that the dais would have been seated. Then he left his hotel room, came down an interior staircase that apparently nobody was monitoring, and got to a small room, some kind of utility room, that was just off the room that we've all seen that he charges through. In that room, the small room, is where he apparently assembled the long gun, which is a shotgun, apparently, which is a strange weapon to choose in this instance. So he does that, and then he leaves there and sprints through that room, the last room, towards the last line of defense, which is the magnometers. That's where the service was, and that's where they stopped him. Had he gotten through there, it was a few short steps down and then into the ballroom. And then at that point, I assume he was counting on the ability to make it all the way across the ballroom just by sprinting and by scaring people and get close enough to use buckshot, which he says right in his manifesto, which sort of sprays, the shot. You'd have to be pretty close to the president to do that. And then I assume usually you get two shots with that if it's double barrel. And then he had a handgun that I assume he was going to go to, because he said that his target was Trump officials, plural. So that seems to be the plan. And all I can say is, look, thank God they stopped him. We all know that. Hats off to the Secret Service. But consider, Sid, he had gotten close enough that he was just outside the ballroom. What if he'd had a bomb? What if he'd had a machine gun or something? This could have been a lot worse. And I do really think, I just have to double tap what I said earlier. We have to look at these things because Donald Trump's got another 3 years, and they're going to keep trying, man.
Oh, they're going to keep trying. Like I said yesterday on Twitter, they'll keep trying as long as Democrats keep lying. They'll keep trying as long as Democrats keep lying, and they will keep trying. And you're right. If they had a bomb, if somebody had a bomb or a machine gun, it could have been a heck of a lot worse. I mean, this guy's plan was actually silly. He was going to run past, all these different stages of Secret Service, carrying a heavy shotgun and knives. What do you need knives for? I don't know. And then he talked about in his manifesto how he didn't want to have to kill Secret Service people or the Capitol Police. They were nice people. They didn't deserve to die, but he would do whatever it took to make sure he killed people inside the room. So the truth is, while he did get a little too close from most people's comfort, and he was heavily armed, his plan for a very, very smart guy was kind of stupid, no?
Yeah, this guy's a loser. Let's not mince words, all right? Look, he's innocent until proven guilty. Who's also a loser? Mangione. Who also is a loser? The shooter of Charlie Kirk, all right? These guys are all slipping down losers who are imbibing a constant stream of radical, not Democrat, the Democrats you and I grew up on, but radical progressive ideology that has come to the Stalinist conclusion that the ends justify the means. And, when I was growing up, that statement, as we were taught Soviet history, was an example of how far off track the hyper-left had gone as it manifested itself in Soviet Russia. Now, it is mainstreamed. We have people, when I was doing counterterrorism, Sid, we had to contend with the fact that the sanctioners and proselytizers were in caves overseas trying to get their message out, and the internet was spreading it through social media. Now, you have not only more platforms, but you have end-to-end encryption. And further, the sanctioners are not overseas. They have late-night talk show hosts are doing this stuff.
Yeah.
It's part of the mainstream narrative. And so people like this guy, who had what we always called, doing the studies on this stuff, a cognitive aperture, a sort of way to get into his mindset. He's looking for a purpose. He's looking for somehow or other to be a hero. And this is not a hard guy. As you said, he's got a master's degree. He's highly educated. And so he decides to formulate this half-baked plan, which borderline looks to me like suicide by cop, which
Right.
I almost expect to be a defense here. And that's why the manifesto is so important, because you have the targeting of Donald Trump, which allows you to upgrade those charges. So, he's a loser. He's a failure. And I wouldn't be surprised if he actually goes to trial in order to get a little bit more of his moments in the sun. And what worries me about that is that this is a jurisdiction where some of Donald Trump's prosecutions have gone awry just because the jury pulled.
Yeah, just like New York. So a lot of folks are very critical of the Secret Service. I was watching you yesterday morning, Rachel Campos, the whole show, she was critical. Lawrence Jones came on. He was critical. And I want to read this text that I sent to President Trump at 7:19 a.m. yesterday morning. And it reads, "I'm glad you're okay, but sad and sickened that you continue to go through this. So sorry. But the majority of us love and appreciate you, bottom line. Stay strong, my friend." That was 7:19. 3 minutes later, after this chaotic night, President Trump texted me back, 7:22, and it reads, "Thanks, Sid. A rough evening. Secret Service did a great job." And, of course, his signature, President DJT. So he was quick to congratulate the Secret Service. A lot of folks that were on TV yesterday and have spoken to me the last 2 days said, wait a second. A, this guy got dangerously too close. B, let me ask you something. This guy runs through all those Secret Service guys. They've all got guns, and nobody shoots them? How does this guy end up shirtless on the floor, even alive, after what we saw in Butler, Pennsylvania? No answers there. There are still plenty of people that are down on Secret Service even Saturday, despite the president saying, I thought they did a great job. What about you?
The president's reflex, to his great credit, is to support law enforcement and the people around him that are willing to take a bullet for him. And so, I've been on the air regarding this issue a lot over the last, whatever it is, day and a half. And, I'm trying to thread that needle because I do have some genuine ambivalence about this. I have nothing but respect for the Secret Service agents. These are people who go to work, and their job is to get shot protecting a president. I mean, that's their job description. So you're talking real courage here and dedicated people, and more power to them. That said, the agency institutionally, from everything I hear from sourcing I have, and I have some good sourcing on this, is in trouble. They have recruitment problems. They are down thousands of agents. Their average class is only in the dozens, so it'll take years for them to re-up where they need to be. They are a little bit lost being under DHS. A lot of people think they should either be a standalone agency or be put back under Treasury.
Well, wait, you did mention DHS to further complicate this stuff. These guys, like them or not, they have not been paid now in 72 days.
Right. That's right. Another shameful aspect of all of this. And I'm going to tell you something else that you don't hear much, but is a fly in the ointment here. They have, as a sort of legacy aspect of their mandate, doing financial investigations of various sorts, fraud investigations, counterfeiting, that kind of stuff. It doesn't belong under the service. That's a ghost in the machine that survives from decades, hundreds of years ago, actually, 100 and something years, I think it is. They're one of the oldest agencies we have. They go back to the Old West. So what really needs to happen here is they need to be dedicated to one single mission, and that is being a protective agency to do the body work that we all expect of them, get those financial investigations out from under, resource them, get them the agents. And, I think they're holding a meeting. So reportedly, Susie Wiles is convening a meeting. She's the one who's been keeping an eye on this agency, and they're going to take a hard look at it. I don't think by any means Donald Trump is going to hurt the director. I would be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of a shakeup Because, look, just by definition here, they were brave. They stopped it where they were supposed to. The president appreciates them, and that's their job. Not to protect the whole ballroom, not to protect everybody that's there, to protect the president and the VP. That's their mandate. And they got that done. And they jumped on him, and they got the president out of there, and they got the VP out of there. But undeniably, there are some systemic issues there that don't seem to be resolved, and I think they now recognize that.
It's funny, they actually evacuated J.D. Vance first. They got to the
I saw that.
Yeah, why was that?
I don't, look, they have particular agents assigned to particular people, and for whatever reason, the vice president's people seemed to have reacted quicker. I don't know if it's out of deference to the president that they didn't want to jump in front of him or on him. It's a very good question, and I'm sure that's going to be one of the questions they ask, just as they ask, who shot and, how did they all miss? Because my understanding is that there were a lot of shots fired
10.
in close proximity, and nobody hit him.
Yeah, I heard 5 to 10 from Brian Kilmeade early this morning, and nobody hit him.
Brian is good sourcing, so I'm sure that's accurate.
One of his sources, so he's accurate. What do you think about the possibility, if not probability now, of President Trump wearing a bulletproof vest wherever he goes?
Yes, not a bad idea. They probably shouldn't announce that because it could affect how people go at him in terms of targeting and so on.
Right. It's funny you say that because today, for example, Guy Rivera is going to be in a New York courtroom. He's going to be sentenced today for the murder of police officer Jonathan Diller. We all hope he gets the full 90 years, but he found a way to kill Diller to shoot underneath. So I'm glad you said that. Why even tell people that?
That's right. But they should be doing things like that and taking every precaution. Look, Donald Trump came out and said the right things at the press conference. We can't let this still our First Amendment rights. We have to continue to do these events. It's my job as the president. And he knew what he was getting into. He knew what it was like the first time. But, as I said, it's the Secret Service that has to keep him healthy, alive, and his family for the next 3 years, including the vice president. And we have to do everything we can, including building the ballroom, to make sure that we don't have the kind of tragedy that so many on the left really, really want. And we're kidding ourselves if we just continue to say, we're the best, Secret Service is the best, there can be no improvement. Every agency can improve. There's going to be a very deep investigation into this. And I do suspect, maybe unlike Butler, we're going to see some real systemic changes.
I hope so. Paul Mauro, as always, nobody better. You're brilliant on TV. You're great here, too. You become a dear friend. You always make time for me. Thank you so much. Great job this morning, Paul, as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sid. Take care.
God bless you. Great American right there. Great cop. That guy was a hero cop in this town for, ready for this? 22 years. And even served during 9/11. Paul Mauro.
Thanks for listening to Sid and Friends in the Morning. You can hear Sid and Friends in the Morning weekday mornings at 6. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?